So today I want to talk to you a little bit about kind of mulching and hillsides and stuff like this, what your options are, because there's not infinite options usually to make a hillside look nice and also retain soil and all that kind of stuff, right? So this project, you know, what I mainly want to focus on is kind of how we tiered it up a little bit. I wouldn't call this a full tier system because we're not going up a few feet and then flat with retaining walls and stuff. This is kind of just like a holding back type tiered system with the slopes, right? These aren't really walls, it's kind of just like edging that we did here just to kind of help with the hill, right? So these are 2x12, so just a foot tall, pressure treated wood, 2 inches thick. You know, it's good to use for a little soil retention. You know, we got about 1.5 up in there, so there's like kind of 2 in there, and it tapers off, 2 there, you know, 1 there, and then 1 up top. Same thing through here to bring it through. So, you know, before this was just basically a soil slope. You know, it really didn't look good. So we wanted to beautify it, and to be able to hold the plants in place as well, you know, this obviously helps with that. If it's just a slope all the way through, when you first plant your plants, you know, they can be a little bit, if it's planted in a slope, you know, they can be a little bit fragile and stuff. So tearing it off and having less of a slope to worry about makes planting a lot easier. A lot of these plants, especially like, you know, the sages, salvias and stuff, you know, over time they will get nice root systems and stuff that'll hold in the hill and all that and support it even more. Of course, we're going to have basically 0 erosion issues at this point. So coming up here, you know, we have lots of sages and salvias, Salvia grigi, Russian sage, one of my favorites here. We have grass plants and the yellow kangaroo paw, red kangaroo paw. This was planted actually in the middle of summer, and it's doing a lot better than it could be, just because planting midsummer obviously isn't a fantastic time of the year to plant because things just burn up a little bit. A couple of them are wilting over a little bit. We're going to replace a couple of them, but most of these have grown at least twice the size since we've installed them. So this is like fantastic. There's butterflies flying around everywhere. I just saw a giant black bee. You know, there's bees everywhere through here. You can even see them flying around there. You know, so you want to bring the birds and the bees in, that's great. I don't see any hummingbirds, but I'm sure they pay visits here. You know, a lot of the reds and oranges the hummingbirds really like, especially in the salvia type plants, because a lot of the bees and stuff actually can't get to some of these types of flowers. They can't actually really get up inside there very easily, at least. So these are actually almost primarily for hummingbirds and stuff. You know, bees will still kind of squeeze in there if they can, but it'll bring in the hummingbirds. And then so up here, these are actually some existing plants. This is a larger Mexican sage. I don't use these entirely too often, mostly because they get huge, and then you got to cut them down to nothing. Some of these other plants get a little large too, but these ones are a little wild, but they were already here and they look great, so might as well leave them intact, right? There's a festuca that was already there as well. I don't use them very often also because, you know, they get some dead spots over time, but, you know, they look good right now, so that's good. Up here, just for like a little, you know, a little bit of drainage and stuff up top, we have a little gravel area there. And here, weed fabric beneath the gravel because it's a flat area. This is a 3/4 inch Palm Springs gold gravel from Sunburst Decorative Rock. We use Sunburst a lot. They have all sorts of different colors and stuff. You know, more pressure treated wood edging. So we got this edging coming all the way through, and it's just had an edging. Oh, there's a hummingbird. That's hilarious. Let's see if we can get him on the video. See him? Oh, he went around the corner. There he is. So yeah, we got hummingbirds already. That's fantastic. So, you know, and then the colors through here, you know, there are a lot of reds, a lot of purples and stuff. You know, those are more common colors for plants. I have a white over here that's pretty nice. White flowering plants are usually a little bit more fragile, so, you know, we put them more in the shade area. This is a Salvia grigi, or however you'd like to pronounce that. And then, of course, the purple New Zealand flax is always a fantastic option. I use this in almost every single one of my jobs. You know, you can see one up there too. I have a bronze one down there. This is very, very useful. But, you know, getting back to the hillside stuff, I put weed fabric down beneath the more flat areas. So in this area I have weed fabric, and this area I have weed fabric. I have more of the Palm Springs gold gravel here. You can get the color in the video here. That's fantastic gravel. Really lots of colors, yellows, pinks, all sorts of stuff in there. Very nice. And then we used a shredded gorilla hair mulch. So gorilla hair is just a redwood mulch because it kind of looks like gorilla hair, I guess. So you can get kind of close up on that. We got some leaves coming down. it's kind of cool. You know, it looks very natural, even with the leaves mixing in with it. It looks nice. So it's a nice natural look. It's one of the only options to use on a hillside, even with minor slopes and stuff, because it doesn't really move around very much. You know, it might blow with the wind a little bit, kind of, but it kind of mats on top of itself and links itself together, right? If this was wood chips or bark or something, it'd be a lot messier. You get a little squirrel running through it, it'll all fall off the side, all sorts of stuff, right? So this is one of the only things I like to use to actually cover a hillside with something, right? You know, I like doing it like this. It's not a crazy heavy slope, so I can plant the larger plants in it, the 5-gallon size plants. The bucket will be about this big, right? They'll come about this tall, just a little smaller than these. And then I have a drip irrigation system running through all this stuff as well. You don't want to spray hillsides very often, especially when you've already had some erosion issues. But again, this isn't a crazy hillside, so even if you had some existing sprinklers, we could use that, but we converted to drip so we could save on water and all that kind of stuff. I have like a couple succulents through here as well. You know, I got the coral aloe. He'll get those big orange flowers. You know, I have agave, foxtail agave nova there, the blue one, and then I have the Dismediana here. I love these. It's variegated. You get a little bit of yellow in it. But yeah, so as far as the hill is concerned, this is something you can do potentially if you have kind of erosion issues. Step it up a little bit, but not really getting into the retaining wall situation where you're putting in blocks and stacking things and getting into just higher prices. Just putting a little edging all the way through is a good idea for a little soil retention. And then, you know, in these areas we have the weed fabric, so we won't get that many weeds. Up on the hill itself, we're not really going to have a weed fabric because you don't want the mulch to be kind of sliding on top of the fabric and just kind of falling down over time, especially with a heavy rain or wind. So no weed fabric up here. So there might be some weeds to fall up here, but as you can see, these plants are already growing through very crazy. You can probably see on our website some other photos when these were first put in. They're already double in size. This was only like a couple months ago we finished this, so these are growing fantastically. This just shows you what these kind of drought tolerant plants can do in LA. You know, it's been 100 degrees, you know, while they've been rooting, it's been 100 degrees for many days. So this is fantastic. Only got to replace a couple of them, even planting in the middle of summer. So this is what I like to do. Other options for hillsides, of course, you know, are also ground cover type options. I don't like getting into it too often because I just like the look of this. It's just so much bolder. But if we want to get into ground cover type options, you have a steeper slope that I can't really put the edging in very easily, at least, then we can do that. Once we hit kind of a certain slope, we probably aren't even really going to touch it because you don't want to plant larger plants or anything in a heavy slope and disturb the soil. There's such limited options once you get to that certain angle, right? We don't want to touch it very much. So there are certain projects we might not want to take. This one is pretty easy for us. You know, a little bit more of a slope is okay. We can get into ground cover plants or maybe smaller plants. We don't disturb the soil so much while we plant them. You know, sometimes we'll use a 1-gallon size instead of the larger 5-gallon if the slope's a little worse for individualized plants. And you just disturb the soil a little bit less because a 1-gallon size pot is very different than a 5-gallon. Yeah, ground cover type stuff, we can get into it. I don't like it as much. I'd rather do this, but in certain cases, you can't even really actually plant much larger than a small ground cover type plant in their little flats, right? So we can do that, and there's several options for ground covers that we can go over, but this is what I like. This is, if I could do this all day, I would do this all day. This is fantastic, and it's thriving, and it's spectacular.